probably some things we don't understand, but we have to understand it. We have to make the time now, moving forward. Same things with our schools. 60%. That's a 60% growth in 10 years. Can we continue to sustain, if we're gonna see these numbers over the next 10 years? I don't think we can. So this is a big red flag. It's telling us we need to do something because we cannot continue to see this amount of growth. Our sped cost, this is a huge, huge challenge for our school committee and our school department. And I really feel for them. And we need to understand their challenges. Us as the community and us as a board. That's a big number. And the vocational number, it's a little skewed. It was weird. In 2000, we only got about $21,000. But every year subsequently following, we had to pay. Sorry, we didn't get, we had to provide. It was around, see, the average, this number's a little misguided, but it's really around 300 grand each year. So we have to watch that and learn from it. And I'm glad that we have Mrs. Diamond now on board so we can start to peel back into that a little bit and start to get educated ourselves. Because that's a rising cost that we can't continue to let go without understanding. And there is also some potential future expenses that we don't see coming from their infrastructure failing and starting to get older, and we're gonna have to participate in that as long as, at the same time, excuse me, as we're trying to look at our infrastructure as we take on things like wastewater. Okay, before I go on, I've said a lot, so I wanna give an opportunity to ask some questions at this point before I go on to the next couple pages.
Michael, I should have picked this up before, but I think we could add another line to this overall budget and separate from general government our fixed costs. In other words, that number includes employee benefits.
Yep.
And
It does.
debt service. I think if we broke it into two pieces,
So you want fixed
your,
costs?
your growth in, your growth in town employees, right, being slightly negative with a large change. It's got nothing to do with the cost of the employees and more the cost of our employee benefits for both school and town, which are in that budget.
Yeah. No, that's
I think
true.
we ought to, I think we ought to pull that out. And the other comment is, and I know the sped numbers came from
School committee.
finance and the school committee, but they don't include IDA and other sped money that comes into the school budget, external. I mean, Carl has given us numbers in the past. 2009, the sped expenditure was $7 million. So that's another area that we need to delve into a little further.
No, and I had those numbers in here originally, and as you know, last week we gave the school.
Yeah, no, I understand.
And they did make that change, so.
Right. But I think they left out the
I don't disagree.
funds that come in from the outside.
So essentially, they're showing a net number.
Right.
This shows a net number.
Just,
Okay.
if I might, just as a follow-up, in relation to the sped, I think it's important that we have the overall true costs of education, you know, whether it be special education, including all the other federal monies that come in, because those federal monies are still part of a revenue source that we have that occasionally fluctuate and have, certainly have a significant impact on our ability to deliver services if they shrink. The need for services don't go away, and the cost of those usually come back to the cities and towns where we have to go by raise and appropriate and, again, cut back other services in order to provide it. Additionally, I think, you know, while the raw numbers look, they are what they are, like a 23% increase in school employees over 10 years, but the overall net increase in employees for the town as a whole is just over 10%. It's not, you know, it's negative 1% for the town, 23%, but really, if you look at it, you know, we had 640 employees in 2000, and we have 705 in 2009. That's a 10% increase. You know, I just want to make sure
Right.
that, while these numbers are true, that they're really not the whole story. We actually had a 10% increase in employees in order to deliver the level of services that we currently enjoy in North Reading. So, well, it's 23% in this one category. The overall number of employees is just a 10% increase, and I think it's important that we present that as a factual statement. You know, in other words, we should group together, same way with retirees. We're showing 40% increase in retirees from the schools, but it's really 33.8% overall number of retirees. The factor in relation to the retirees, the reason that it's happened is that obviously we had more employees that have come on board, but also with the change in legislation that was approved by the state, particularly on the school department side, teachers actually get to retire a little bit earlier, than they did before with the new formula. And this was during this 10-year time period, from 2000 to 2009. And people are living longer, so we're carrying more retirees for a longer period of time, as far as the way of explanation. So I think we need to aggregate the data, paint the true picture. Because people have a tendency to look at charts, take the snapshots, and say, look at this, you know, as opposed to, you know, what's the overall picture? We're talking about a strategic plan for the town as a whole. And it's, again, 10.2% overall increase in employees, retirees 33%, as opposed to.
But the important thing is, though, you look at the cost associated with what he's saying. And I think that's the most important thing. Because can we continue to handle and afford for us to take on the cost associated? When you say 38%, can we afford it? When you peel back those numbers, and I don't think we can. Is it sustainable for the town of North Reading going for the next 10 years? I don't think we can, and that's what we have to do with this. I don't know what the changes have to be, but to me, it screams that we have to make sure that we make decisions that we can afford, that's affordable and sustainable.
I'm not disagreeing with you entirely with that. I just want to make sure that we're painting the proper picture when we're presenting the story. You know, that we've had a 10% increase in employees. You know, so along with that 10% increase in employees comes a cost for benefits. You know, so we're gonna say that our benefits, you know, increased 222%, you know, whatever, 20% a year.
I've sent this document to you for the last 2.5 months.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna make.
And I'm kind of surprised that you would want me to present it that way now. I think you have a great idea. I wish you told me about it 2.5 months ago, or even 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago, because I think that adds value to it. I find it a little interesting that
I'm not here to make excuses to you or anybody else as to what my time requirements or what my time availability was over the last 2 months. So I'm not gonna spell that out to you, but, you know, as far as my priorities as to where my time was being spent, was not on this. It was on much more important things. That being said, again, I apologize for not having the time to do it. But that doesn't diminish the fact that we should be presenting a true picture of, telling the right story, the full story.
The story is right.
I think it's piecemeal. And again, we had a 10% overall increase in employees.
Well, you're looking at it a different way, but it is right.
Steve, I would agree with you in terms of retirees, because that gets grouped under essentially fixed cost. But in terms of town employees versus school employees, that's direct budgetary impact on the individual budgets, general government and schools. So I think in terms of the total number of employees on both sides.
I'm not saying take the numbers out. What I'm saying is just aggregate it, total it, and say there's been a 23% increase in school employees. Overall, 10% for the town as a whole.
I think it's an unnecessary line. I really do. I think it just.
I think it all depends on what are we attempting to do here in relation to laying out a strategic plan for the entire town. I'm not looking to, I think when we do things like this, it's okay to spell it out, but I think it's important that we make everybody feel as comfortable as possible that the true story is being put in print. I mean, there's no doubt that there's only been a 10% increase in employee base. And most of the growth.
Community-wide, agreed.
Okay.
Obviously, the numbers speak for themselves.
Yeah, but no, I had to take my calculator out and do it, because it's not here. I mean, I'm just saying we need to paint the entire picture, not take a piecemeal here, and aggregate it for people.
Okay.
Good. Any questions from the? Yes, Carol?
Just a concern that if we aggregate it up, then we actually make it, we're not drilling down to identify where the areas where there might be too much growth. or areas that you dive into.
It's in the details, that's fine.
But I think you don't lose the details, because that's.
I'm not
where
saying
you
lose the
find
details.
A lot of the bigger, problems, I guess.
I don't disagree, I'm not saying lose the details.
Okay.
What I'm saying
I
is
think
aggregated-
one of the things that, that Steve may be alluding to is if you wanted to look at the growth and employee benefits in the health insurance area, right, then you might want to look at it from the point of
Right,
view that
which-
Steve is coming from.
Which,
Because that's the only, since it's all lumped together, it's really the only way you can get a measure of what that growth is. Because, if you look at the number in growth in health insurance, which you can't find here at this point, it's a substantial number, right? And part of that number includes a growth in the number of employees taking health insurance. Jeffrey?
Yeah, in looking at this, I think these details are fantastic, they're very helpful to us, but I do see in general, this is a work in process, and we've got to make sure that we get it right, and the different perspectives are important, and what Steve is mentioning, what you have up there, if we can incorporate the different perspectives, we have a better chance of learning from the numbers that we see. So, I mean, I see this as a document that's gonna keep evolving and evolving as we progress, because numbers do change, and we have to keep looking at them from different perspectives.
Yep, it says it right in the document, right up front and right in the end. It says both.
Well, yeah, but I don't want us to get into a situation where we don't want to include something because we're here and we want to go forward. I mean, I think we need to make sure we incorporate all the numbers, and as Steve indicated, the numbers that he was referring to were not very visible, and yet had to calculate them out, so.
Well,
you know.
I'd like to then ask you, Steve, if you could write that section up and then provide it, that would be appreciated.
I don't know that over the next 2-3 weeks I'm gonna have the time, and I don't wanna get into what's going on in my personal life, but I can tell you right now, I won't have the time to do it. As much as I would like to, I don't have the time to do it.
Let's move on.
Just an aside, the paragraph underneath your first chart, just as a clarification too, are we talking fiscal year, calendar year? Not that one, the chart up above, just above that chart.
The average annual growth amount for the past 10 years?
551. 2009, the figure was this. Estimated new growth for fiscal year 2011 is approximately that. I don't know if are we mixing calendar year, fiscal year, or they just put, okay, so it's FY 2009? Okay.
Again, I said I'm not gonna go through, read the document to you. You'll see there are some paragraphs in here with some words, but the one particular sped is really challenging. And again, I encourage everybody to go to the school committee meetings, be an active part of that group, and understand the challenges they have. This is not an easy thing. It's not an easy thing, not only for North Reading, across the Commonwealth. So these numbers, is it something that we can absolutely absorb every year at the rate we're absorbing? Absolutely not, we know that. So it's important for us as a board to support our school committee, our school department, in trying to, how do we handle this challenge? And then work with the folks like Brad Jones and his office to try to encourage some changes in this area, as well as continue to work with EMRU and Stand for Children to also make some positive changes that can help our town without losing the most important thing, the service, the important service that these children need.
Mike, just, see one other thing, just that it's the 841, that's the school increase. It should be plus the 3.2, so it's really 11.6, if I'm looking at your chart correctly. Looks like an $11.6 million increase between school and sped, the variance.
No, the sped's part of the school. So in other words.
It is, so it's not a,
It's not a separate cost.
although in the chart, we have it broken out separately. Correct, Mike?
We do, yeah, because the sped actually,
Don't add it together, Steve.
Don't add it together, okay.
don't add it together, right? And then I have another chart coming up that's gonna talk about going forward and what percentage we foresee coming forward. Another big contributor, and you've heard us talk a lot about it here, in these meetings and in the town, at town meeting, is our health insurance. I mean, you look at these